So Trump's mega bill squeaks through the Senate, but House can still reject final version. Yeah, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They'll change some things to satisfy some people. That's my opinion. The Senate on Tuesday passed President Donald Trump's mega bill after days of negotiations and a marathon amendment session that at times appeared to imperil the domestic policy package. The final vote was 51-50, with Vice President J.D. Vance casting a final tie-breaking vote. Republican Senators Tom Tillis of North Carolina, Rand Paul of Kentucky, and Susan Collins of Maine all broke with their party and voted against the massive spending bill, so they got Murkowski. Senate Majority Leader John Thune's victory in the upper chamber may be short-lived, however, as the mega bill now goes to the House, where it faces an uncertain future amid firm GOP holdouts. The House, which just squeaked out its version of the bill, must accept the Senate's substantial changes to the package, which is a daunting task, especially as some GOP lawmakers have expressed continued concerns over the bill's impact on the deficit. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office projects the bill will add at least $3 trillion to the federal deficit over the next decade. So this was Mark Kelly. They did an all-night amendment-a-thon, much to the chagrin of Senator Young Frankenstein, as we'll see later. But this was Mark Kelly at the break of dawn.
Sun has just come up and still here at the U.S. Capitol. Been about 20 hours. Still voting on amendments on a bill they don't even have the text for, and my Republican colleagues in there, they don't have the votes because this bill is that bad. After 20 hours, can't even vote on it because it kicks 17 million people off of Medicaid, their only health insurance. It cuts food benefits for people who are hungry. It adds $3.3 trillion to the debt, all to give a big tax cut to the richest Americans. That's what they're trying to do. But they can't do it, not yet, and we're fighting to stick up for the American people here to make sure that they don't get delivered this horrible piece of legislation.
Now, we don't know if it's true. The rumor is that J.D. Vance now actually has to sleep with Lisa Murkowski. That's something apparently Mark Kelly did not account for. So Tom Tillis, after Donald Trump threatened to primary him, decided not to run for re-election, so he is a free man, and he speaks like one now.
So what do I tell 663,000 people in 2 years or 3 years when President Trump breaks his promise by pushing them off of Medicaid because the funding's not there anymore, guys? In the White House, senators advising the president are not telling him that the effect of this bill is to break a promise. And you know the last time I saw a promise broken around health care, with respect to my friends on the other side of the aisle, it's when somebody said, if you like your health care, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. We found out that wasn't true. That made me the second Republican Speaker of the House since the Civil War, ladies and gentlemen, because we betrayed the promise to the American people. 2 years later, 3 years later, it actually made me a U.S. Senator because in 2010, it had just been proposed. And just anticipation of what was going to happen was enough to have a sea change election that swept Republicans into the majority for the second time in 100 years. Now, Republicans are about to make a mistake on health care and betraying a promise. It is inescapable that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made in the Oval Office or in the cabinet room when I was there with finance, where he said we can go after waste, fraud, and abuse on any programs. Now, those amateurs that are advising him, not Dr. Oz, I'm talking about White House healthcare experts.
Not Dr. Oz. I
to
mean
tell
amateurs.
Dr. Oz knows his crudité.
Yeah, exactly.
And we got an old saying in North Carolina: man who knows his crudité knows his bills.
By amateurs, I mean no offense or disrespect to Dr. Oz.
Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz knows what he's doing.
That those instructions that were to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse all of a sudden eliminates a government program that's called the provider tax. We have morphed a legal construct that admittedly has been abused and should be eliminated into waste, fraud, and abuse. Money laundering. Read the code. Look at how long it's been there.
All right. So
he's right.
Normally, I'm not very sympathetic to if only the great leader knew he would do something about this defense. But after watching Donald Trump very insistently, as you very persuasively argued, insist that the MS-13 in the photos of Abrego Garcia were not photoshopped, maybe. Like after watching him insist after following Stephen Miller's lead, that the Supreme Court had ruled in their favor in that case, something he seemed to completely believe in subsequent interviews, that the Supreme Court had ruled 9-0 in their favor. Maybe, he's such a lazy slob. Like he might, I'm sure they're all telling him this protects Medicare and only cuts waste, fraud, and abuse. You think Donald Trump is going to be laying there in the Lincoln bedroom with a little book light reading this fucking bill? Like, you think he knows anything about it beyond what they tell him about it or beyond what he sees on Fox News? It doesn't go outside of that media ecosystem as far as we can tell.
No, I mean, according to a lot of credible reporting, Fox News coverage of the Israeli airstrikes is what encouraged Donald Trump to join the campaign, right? To send in the U.S. bombers. Like, he's very susceptible to flattery and flattering media coverage and just outright lies and propaganda. Could very well be, but if that is the case,
very well be he does not understand what the bill actually does. It's possible.
Certainly
possible. It's possible.
Certainly possible. Not
with
an excuse,
another president,
obviously.
I would say that's just cult of personality shit.
Right.
With this one, maybe. He might literally not know, which is not really saying much for him as it is.
Exactly. I mean, either way, the buck stops with him, and whoever is telling him this is, as Tom Tillis said there, he's exactly right, 100% right. Not serving him well. The working poor who get thrown off of Medicaid, who tend to vote Republican in these, mostly white swing state kind of counties and areas, that is going to come back to bite the Republicans just like it bit the Democrats. It was a good example that he invoked of the ACA.
He's talking about Obamacare.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. He said you could keep your doctor.
Right.
That turned out to be completely untrue, and there was a lot of backlash over that. People are very attached to their doctors. They develop a trust with that doctor,
Right.
That's not a joke to just tell people that and then have them find out it's not true. So here, Ron Smith says, Carolyn Levitt blatantly lies again. Of course, she claims this does not cut Medicaid. And he says, the BBB cuts Medicaid. These people are professional liars. It's worth reading through because we're going to take a look at a couple of the responses to that. But here is Washington's favorite sugar baby since the Washington Madam.
Bill strengthens Medicaid. It will protect those benefits that hardworking Americans need, and that's why the president wants this bill to pass. The senator was wrong. The president put out a Truth Social post addressing it, and then the senator announced he's no longer running for office anymore. So I think that case has been closed, and the White House is continuing to focus on getting this legislation to the president's desk for his signature.
Goes home to a 60-year-old man.
Yep.
She calls daddy, reputedly. Linda RN says, you're the liar. It protects Americans by not allowing illegal aliens to bleed Medicaid dry. Yeah, cuts Medicaid for illegal aliens and the able-bodied over 26. Which of those two do you have a problem with? Sensing a theme here. Myla Joy. Republican senators who voted against the amendment to remove illegals from Medicaid. Primary challenges need to be done for Paul, Collins, and Murkowski. Well, this was, I guess, before Murkowski flipped, and Susan Collins on the list there. And Cat Turd is, some say, the greatest political mind of his generation. For the next 18 months, Tom Tillis will vote no on anything Trump wants. That's exactly who he is. He's never cared about the people of North Carolina. Not like the guy who's going to throw over 100,000 of them off their health care. He's the one who cares about them. It's all about him and his fragile ego. So you see, everything, they need the immigrants. They need the immigrants because that's who they're going to deflect to whenever they want to push something unpopular through. Yep. It's about illegals, and then they can get the chuds, the insecure, broken-brained, mostly men, but we're assuming times are changing, but we're assuming Linda is still a woman's name. They're going to jump in there to feel, because they feel no sense of strength, of agency, of self-worth. That's what this language is designed to appeal to. People who are deeply insecure, who have no pride in themselves, who can only find strength or a sense of strength by latching onto something that they perceive as a movement that's signaling strength. Yeah, I'm strong. I hate immigrants too.
Right.
Exactly. With that. Now here, profile encourage. Senator profile encourage Hawley. This guy, this guy to me is a bigger piece of shit than the people who are just full-throatedly endorsing this bill. He keeps going on about how bad it is, and then he keeps voting.
Keeps voting yes. Yeah,
it's really amazing.
We can't be cutting health care for working people and for poor people in order to constantly give special tax treatment to corporations and other entities. And we've delayed that in this bill. But it will, unless we take further changes or take further steps, it will happen in future years. And I'm opposed to this. If we're going to be a working class party, we've got to protect working people. And I just
so you voted no?
Stuff in here, I think it's bad. And I think we've delayed the worst of it. And in the short term, for my state, it's going to be fine. But on a going forward basis, we cannot go on like this. I think the party has a lot of thinking to do.
These people all read, like Benny Johnson, Josh Hawley, they all read as sociopaths. They all read like serial killers. Like, seemed normal, but there was something off about him. There's something just a little, like, look at him. Like, there's something a little like animated wax figure about these people. Like, there's some vital spark of the human soul that just is not there.
Yeah, like the city clerk of Halloween Town. Like before Christmas. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so we don't know, as I said, the fact that the bill passed was just breaking right before we went on. We don't know what they gave to Murkowski. Originally, they gave her a laundry list of breaks and an exception for Alaska on the Medicaid cuts and $50,000 for whale captains. Who knew there were still enough whale captains working out of Alaska for that to be a sweetener? But the Senate parliamentarians struck that down because they have to pass this through reconciliation. So we don't know what they offered her to get her to flip, but Michael Tracy had posted about this previously. There's nothing more big and beautiful than middle-of-the-night horse trading with Lisa Murkowski to give Alaska special carve-outs for no particular reason. We know that there was a lengthy meeting between Thune and Murkowski, but we don't know what the details were yet, obviously. So here's Glenn explaining how a lot of this money is a giveaway from the Pentagon to defense contractors like Palantir at the expense of the working class. It's worth watching this whole segment. We'll just watch a little bit of it.
$11.8 million more uninsured from the Senate bill, according to the CBO. So this is the scheme that's happening, and it's been happening for forever. There are certain programs, very limited programs, that are designed to help the middle class and the working class. That's why the middle class and the working class are doing so poorly. And the main promise of the Trump administration, the MAGA movement, the Republican Party has been, remember, we're going to stand for the forgotten person, the working class people. And huge numbers of them who voted for Trump on that basis are actually on Medicare. They use Medicare. They can't afford health insurance. They can't afford, if their families get sick, some accident happens, they use Medicare. And according to the CBO, just from yesterday, 11.8 million more uninsured people, if that Senate bill passes, the big, beautiful bill will become uninsured. So huge numbers of billions and billions and billions of dollars to Palantir, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, etc. The working class people smashed. No more Medicare rather.
Yep. It's a big club, folks, and you ain't in it. So some of the impacts of this bill will be it blows up the debt by $4 trillion. Remember that debt they care so much about? We have to scale back because of this debt. Largest healthcare cuts in history. So we're hearing different numbers. It looks like the CBO figure is 11.8. I'm not sure. Mark Kelly also said 17 million. I'm not sure where that figure is coming from. 11.8 is pretty bad in and of itself, but this says 17 million Americans would lose health care. 300 rural hospitals could close. 500 nursing homes could close. Premiums skyrocket for everyone. Largest cut to nutrition assistance in history. Decimates clean energy in America. Kills hundreds of thousands of jobs. Largest transfer of wealth from poor to rich in history. Now, you know what's really sad? When I redid this slideshow, I had to take out the last slide. You know what the last slide was? It was the phone number to call the Senate to pressure them not to pass the bill.
But that is obsolete.
Yep. That's what I thought was going to happen. You know, in the end, there is a cult of personality around Donald Trump. And if you do want to stand up to him, they're going to come at you. They've made it very clear. They're going to get their cult after you. They're going to get their pod bros to attack you. You're going to be pilloried on X and other social media platforms. They're going to make life very hard for you. And, most people like Tom Tillis, they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with it. You know, most of these fucking people are rich. Like, they don't need to stay in office.
Right.
They can retire quite comfortably. They have a nice pension. So Tillis is like, fuck it, what do I want to take that heat for? And if you look at his floor speech, probably part of his incentive was, at least I can be honest, for a few months if I'm not running for re-election. You know, the Masseys, the Rand Pauls, that's a very rare breed. In both cases, they probably own those seats for as long as they want them, no matter what Trump throws at them. They are probably Trump-proof. I think, if anything, particularly with Massey, Trump will hurt himself more attacking Massey than he's going to hurt Massey. He's a very, very beloved figure with a very particularly impassioned part of Trump's own base. He should really think better of that politically. But yeah, man, I mean, most of them, they don't want to incur the wrath of the big guy, at least thus far. We'll see what happens as this moves to the House. Musk just went on his tweet storm right before this vote. The House is going to have more time to consider whether they want to deal with him sinking money into a primary. But you know what? They could also feel like Elon says a lot of things. You know, Trump is actually in office, actually now, and we know he's going to primary us if we cross him. This is why I've been saying all along, yeah, man, they might change some things. There will be some changes, sure. But overall, the shape of this, I believe it's going to pass pretty much as what it is.
Yeah, look, ultimately, you're making it very hard for swing state and swing district Republicans to survive the midterms if you pass this, right? Like, that's just a fact, right? So if you're Tom Tillis and you're up for re-election in North Carolina, which is not a deep red state, it's a swing state that leans red, you're making it very tough on him as it is. If he were a good soldier and he supported the bill, he'd have a tough reelection fight, right?
Right.
If he's honest and he says, look, this is a horrible idea, he still has a brutally difficult reelection fight because the party wholesale is going to pay a price for this in the midterms, assuming we have free and fair midterms, which is a long ways away. But, you know, if you burn Trump, now you have the MAGA base against you. Now in a tough midterm in a swing state, you got almost no shot because your turnout's going to be shit. So it's a lose-lose. And this is to the point you were making on Sunday. Like, look, ultimately, we know this bill is poison for anyone with a tough race in 2026 with an R next to their name. It's poison. It's going to drag them down. At that point, they have to ask themselves, okay, what are we really doing here? This is our one chance to do this. This is our one chance to just, you know, put this country on, you know, Reaganism on steroids. This is really a transfer from the Reagan era into something even more dystopian. Like, are we going to do it or not? Yeah, the midterms are going to be a bitch, but I think that's a price they're willing to pay because this is what it's all about to these people. And the people funding these people.
And the Democrats are owned by the same people, so they're not going to roll any of this back anyway. So this is our big chance. You get the Democrats in, they'll have the rotating villain, they'll have their mansion or their cinema. Oh gosh, we would have done it. We would have rolled it back.
Right. You may get a thing or two back just so they could say they did something, but not really. Not really. Just like the ACA was really not a revocation of the privatization of healthcare, was really not a reversal of that. You know, it put a few Band-Aids on a few wounds here and there, but ultimately it just continued this slide. And so, yeah, I think they figure, you know what, if that's a price we have to pay, that's a price we have to pay. I think people who are taking these yes votes in swing states and swing districts know that this could very well cost them their job. Hey, you know what? As long as we're good soldiers and we do the donors' bidding, that's what the revolving door is there for. When we get voted out because the policies are unpopular, we go and work for the people who paid us to implement the policies. I think that is their thinking. I don't think they're going to be politically prudent about this at all. Even before you get into conversations about Elon and primaries and things like that, this is going to be a disaster for them politically. You can't, but as Tom tells, this is as simple as it gets. You can't throw 17 million people off their health care and not pay a price for it at the ballot box. You just can't. That does not happen. If Obama paid the price for the ACA, this is going to be that and more and more.
What we need is a trans athlete to kill a girl in a volleyball match.
Exactly.
Who's with me? Who's with me?
Yeah, exactly. That's all they can hope for. You know, and even with that shit, like you can't culture war your way out of that. You throw people off healthcare, that trumps everything. That trumps everything.
Please clap.